Let me start off with that I'm not saying or suggesting in this video that all police officers are unaware about human trafficking or that they all cannot identify it. In fact, according to the National Human Trafficking Hotline, law enforcement is the group responsible for the second most calls to report human trafficking. And I fully acknowledge that some of the most knowledgeable people in the country on the topic are law enforcement officials. That being said, the evidence I'm going to share with you today clearly shows that most of the 800,000 plus police officers in the US do not know what human trafficking is. Make sure you watch this video to the end so that you are able to understand how the media, higher education, and department training all play a role in underpreparing police officers to identify and help human trafficking victims. Let us first take a look at the media, because before they become police officers, they are exposed to the same content as anyone else. The media depiction of human trafficking is almost exclusively on sex trafficking. From Hollywood to the local news, there is a focus on this single type of trafficking. This is interesting, being that Polaris, a large anti-trafficking nonprofit, found there to be at least 25 types of trafficking within the US in 2017. Even popular ways of accessing media slant towards Hollywood movies and books that do not accurately portray human trafficking. For example, go ahead and pause this video right now and go to Google and type in human trafficking movies and see what pops up. I bet it looks just like this, because that's exactly what I did, and as you can tell, all but one of these films is about sex trafficking solely. Going to Amazon and searching for books yields a similar result, with 18 of the first 22 of the books appearing focusing on sex trafficking only. You will find this to be true in all forms of popular media consumption. From Netflix to Hulu, the media consistently focuses on sex trafficking and sensationalizing its portrayal, so anyone who is getting their understanding of human trafficking from the media solely would be grossly uninformed about human trafficking in the real world. From 1990 to 2000, police departments requiring a degree increased 300%. By the year 2000, well over half of police officers had some college experience. However, that college experience did little to prepare future police officers to better understand human trafficking. A researcher in 2014 asked criminal justice students where they got their information, and 65% identified the media as their source for information about human trafficking. Having students receive their information about human trafficking from the media solely opens the possibility for sensationalism being accepted as fact. A separate research study found as myths about human trafficking increase, the ability to identify victims decreases for criminal justice professionals. This acceptance of myths can be so damaging that rather than identifying victims, police officers can end up blaming victims, as human trafficking myth acceptance was found to be a significant predictor in being able to believe or blame victims. This misinformation causes these well-intentioned college students to be so uninformed that while the Global Report on Human Trafficking from 2018 showed more than 90 countries sending victims into the US, and the majority of those being adults, yet another study in 2018 found that criminal justice students perceived adults involved in the sex trade as being prostitutes instead of victims. All of this confusion likely results from the simple fact that human trafficking is not discussed within higher education or criminal justice programs to a significant degree. A content analysis from 2012 looked at the course offerings for criminal justice students and across 100 undergraduate programs, and discovered students' exposure to content about human trafficking in the classroom was limited, with only a handful of undergraduate courses mentioning human trafficking in the course description. And as a criminal justice instructor myself for more than 6 years, I can attest that many of my colleagues are unaware of the specific definition of human trafficking. And lastly, if you think that the textbooks are possibly mentioning human trafficking, I sadly must inform you that after conducting my own review of more than 5,000 pages from many of the most popular Introduction to Criminal Justice and Criminology texts, that only 1% of the pages mentioned anything about human trafficking, with most focusing on international sex trafficking. While the media is not expected to accurately portray human trafficking, and higher education is offering few opportunities to educate future officers about human trafficking, the police academies and thousands of departments that specifically train and prepare officers could offer sufficient training on human trafficking. However, in 2014, only 32 states either mandated or encouraged law enforcement to receive human trafficking training. And while many states may suggest training, the individual departments are not responding uniformly, as researchers discovered that more than 75% of departments had received no training over the previous 4 years. Even within departments that do provide training, not all officers are trained, as it was discovered that just 17% of surveyed officers received training on human trafficking, with just under a third of those reporting their training as being brief, with some receiving less than 1 hour. One study found that training and awareness about human trafficking was so low that more than a third of officers were unaware if their state had a human trafficking law. All of this undertraining and lack of training leads officers right back to drawing conclusions similar to college students, as nationwide officers across the United States blamed victims for their victimization, especially those trafficked through prostitution. In the end, the reason many police officers do not know what human trafficking is seems to be a combination of misinformation from the media, under or not educated about the topic in college, and a lack of willingness to offer comprehensive training at departments and academies around the country. Keep in mind, all departments have traffic units. Many have vice units. Some have SWAT. But human trafficking is the second most profitable crime in the world, and many departments have a single person or no one at all as their entire human trafficking response. With no training in college or academy, officers are left with impressions made on them from the media and sent into the real world with a misunderstood concept of what trafficking is and how to potentially help victims. Thank you for listening to Human Trafficking Hater. If you're interested in getting more content about human trafficking, how to address it, and how it impacts millions around the world, please subscribe and join us as we continue to hate human trafficking and raise awareness.